Is the relationship between the United States and China spiraling out of control? Are we destined for war? Welcome back to Everyman Prepping. We're going to talk about that. We're going to go through an article that discusses the relationship between the two countries and where it's headed. And we're also, before we get into that deeply, we're going to talk about some communication cables that were cut between Taiwan and one of its small islands near China, and how that could be a prelude to war and what to expect in a war if we get that way between China and Taiwan. So starting off here, you'll see that there's a wartime scenario unfolds as Taiwan suspects China of cutting undersea internet cables. A lot of people don't realize this, but the way the internet gets from continent to continent is through giant cables that are laid across the bottom of the ocean floor. You know, we got cables from the U.S. into Europe, also on the other side of the Pacific from the U.S. into Asia. That's how communication goes between a lot of countries. It's all undersea cables. It's not satellite. It's all hardwired. And yes, you can cut those. And so this says that on February 2nd, undersea communication cables that connect Taiwan's main island to the Matsu Islands were cut. They said a ship took out one, a fishing vessel took out another one. Not sure if it's on purpose. Here you see Taiwan and little islands. To give you a little better idea, we can look here. So here's Taiwan, this little island. There's China over here, and the little island is this little guy right here. And you can see it right here. There's not much to it. So the cables were cut between Taiwan and that island. They couldn't communicate, so no internet, no communications. That affects banking, finances, news, emails, business. Everything gets affected. Since then they've gone through and replaced it with satellite communications between the two because they haven't repaired the cable yet. These things aren't easy to repair. Like I said, they lay across the bottom of the ocean. If you look on this picture here, you'll see the undersea cables. I mean, look how many cables are just between China, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines. It's pretty amazing the amount of cables out there. And you cut these, like I said, most likely when you attack a country, you want to take out their communications, you're going to cut them off the internet. If something happened between the war expands further between Russia or China, you could, I would expect cables to be cut between the U.S. and Russia. I mean, U.S. and Europe, U.S. and Japan and South Korea and the allies over there, Australia. I definitely think they've been mapped by the subs, and they would cut them. Maybe they've been mined already. Who knows? And they can just blow them remotely. But I would expect that to happen. As you can see from Taiwan here, they actually, if you follow some of these lines, a lot of them go back to mainland China. So they get a lot of their internet structure from China. They might want to think about moving some of that more to China or the Philippines or South Korea, a friend of their nation, because, like I said, that's the first thing you're going to do in war is try to cut off communications of your enemy. It says, but it does say here that Taiwanese officials have theorized that the illegal Chinese sand dredging around the tiny island exposed the cables and allowed for the accidental damage. So they're not outright blaming China for doing this. I don't think they want to go there yet, but it's just a prelude of what could happen. And if we lose communications over here in the United States during a war, think about this. Business, financial transactions, emails, anything like that is going to be gone. So have a plan to communicate that doesn't involve the internet in case that happens. Okay, now let's go on to our main article we want to go about, and that's about the relationship between the United States and China. And if you're enjoying this, please hit the like button, comment, and share it with friends and family. And if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing, joining the Everyman Prepping community. We'd love to have you. So going on here, we see that China warns there will surely be conflict and confrontation with the U.S. if nothing changes. Story out of Wall Street Journal is where some of these quotes came from. But they said there's a warning that warns that the U.S. and China are plunging further into a spiral of hostility. All right, sounds pretty scary there. All right, so what we have here is the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang just warned the entire world that, quote, there surely will be conflict and confrontation, unquote, with the United States unless there is a dramatic change in the U.S. behavior. Notice how they said the U.S. behavior has to change. Then they're talking about stuff like interfering with Taiwan, sending troops there, military drills in the area, military, sale of military equipment to Taiwan, all that stuff. So, don't worry about the Chinese behavior. They said, we'd expect this out of the Chinese too. Our behavior needs to change. And then it goes on to say, And you would think that such a direct threat would be front page news all over the nation, all over the United States. But it's not. You hardly hear about this. If you're watching channels like mine, a few other ones, you'll hear about it. But mainstream media, you're not going to really hear this. It says, unfortunately, most of our politicians don't seem to understand how serious this is. I fully agree with that. And I also think most of the population of this country doesn't understand how serious a war with China would be. I mean, think about it. If China invades Taiwan, you can imagine that all trade and financing and everything will be cut off. I mean, if it's only logical that if you're at war with your enemy, you're not going to keep sending them all the stuff that everybody buys from Amazon and eBay and all the junk in the Walmarts and the other stores. I don't know what percent of stuff in stores is made in China, but it's got to be like 80-90%, I would imagine. Let's say I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot from the other Asian countries and some from Mexico. Well, let's call it 75%. Let's say you take 75% of the trade of all the stuff you get and it's gone. Especially pharmaceuticals, I think that's like 80 or 90%. You take that all off the table, it's gone. China could do that. They really hurt the United States. We suffer here dramatically in this country. I don't think people realize that, but that's what would happen. But we can talk more about that in a minute. Let's continue on here. It says, Zhang also said, so this is Zhang, he's continuing, if the United States does not hit the brake, but continues to speed down the wrong path, no amount of guardrails can prevent the derailing, and there surely will be conflict and confrontation. Now, I really want to point out the wording here. I mean, when the Chinese speak, they speak very deliberately. A lot of our politicians, they'll just say whatever it is to get elected. They'll lie, they'll cheat, steal, they'll just say outrageous things with no repercussions. Especially if you're on one side of the aisle as opposed to the other, you have a lot more freedom from the press of what you can say. You can bluntly just lie and you just get away with it. In China, they're a little more stringent with the words, a little more exact, a little more precise. Usually what they say has a meaning and something to it. All that being said, what I'm saying that is it's just interesting that they say that there's no amount of guardrails that can prevent derailing. There's a lot of trains that have been derailing lately. No idea if that's connected or not. I just found it quite a coincidence that this gentleman Zhang, he's what is he again? He's the Chinese foreign minister. Just talking about that there's nothing can prevent the derailing between the U.S. and China if we don't change. And there's been a lot of train derailing. Don't know if they're connected. Just found that interesting. Now, the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, he also is getting a little impatient with the United States. Xi Jinping has called on his country's private companies to fight alongside the Communist Party at a time of mounting challenges at home and abroad. So he's trying to rally the troops, rally the people. He knows something's coming because, well, he's the man in charge and something's going to happen. And then it goes on to say, full-blown war with China would be absolutely catastrophic, just like I mentioned. It would be devastating. See, unfortunately, anti-China hysteria, man, words are hard today. Anti-China hysteria in Washington is increasing with each passing day, and the Biden administration seems to rely on any opportunities they have to provoke the Chinese. So what are they talking about? Well, we had the whole balloon fiasco. Then we started shooting everything out of the sky. Then we went straight into, that C-19, it did come from Wuhan. What do you know? And it did come from a lab over there. That's where it came from. So, blame that on China now. And then we get into, now they're cranes. All the cranes at the port, all these Chinese cranes, they're spying on us. Another reason for the U.S. population to hate China. They're monitoring our shipments of military and civilian goods in and out, all that great stuff. And then finally, of course, what the Senate and the House are doing now, they're banning TikTok. The Chinese app, which I've said before is pretty much horrible, especially for children. And, they want to point out that it's Chinese and, they're spying on us, which they are. It totally should be getting rid of. But this is what they said. They're ramping up the anti-Chinese hysteria. It's ramping up every day. Then you throw in the military exercises, the plane incursions, the, sailing through the straits, all that stuff. All that adds up. Now they're saying that this would be a ripe time for China to attack. We got the Ukrainians are using up ammunition faster than we can give it to them. NATO or the United States, and our stockpiles here at home are running low, and because we've shipped a ton of it over to Europe. So it says, why in the world would we even consider getting into another conflict right now? Sadly, we may have no choice. It says. The moment that China invades Taiwan, the U.S. and China will be at war. Yes, that will happen because the United States has to back Taiwan. We've told them that we will protect them. We've told other countries around the world that the U.S. will protect you if you do something like use the U.S. dollar, you buy stuff in dollars, you do what we want, you give us trade with what you want, you don't trade with the people we don't want you to trade with, and we'll protect you. So if the United States doesn't protect one of its allies, then every other country that is basically held over the barrel by the United States, has been bullied by the United States, is going to flee. They're not going to do anything in the United States, not going to trade with the United States, not going to use the dollar because why should they? Because the U.S. didn't hold up their end of the bargain. That's the only thing the U.S. has going for it is its word that they will military protect your country if you do what they say. So if you don't come to Taiwan's aid, all that goes away, and the United States is left in the eyes of the world as a like they say a paper tiger. They just all talk, no action. So they will go to war. They have to. And we had that. Some people are saying the CIA director by 2027 will be at war. The gentleman who writes this article has the same thought that I do. I think it'll happen much sooner because it says here the war in Ukraine is severely draining the U.S. resources, and Joe Biden is a dazed and confused old man. I don't know, what you think back here about the dazed and confused guy. You can write in the comments below what you think about our current president in charge right now. But I'm sure Xi Jinping sees that as an opportunity to do it now. He has a known president. If he waits till after the elections in 2024, you might have a different president, maybe a Republican president, might have much different views, much stronger. So I think it happens before the elections. I think it happens before 2024 if they're going to do it at all. It says China and the United States have flexed their military might around Taiwan over the past 3 days. We have the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They sent 68 aircraft, 10 warships close to Taiwan since Monday. And the U.S. has then flown its P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance planes through the Taiwan Strait itself. So, like I said, this is just part of the spiraling of relations going down. And then it says, of course, we can't forget about the North Koreans. North Koreans don't do anything without China's approval. If you think when North Korea did their parade and they had those 12 giant mobile nuclear ICBM launchers that they built those, with all the sanctions they're going through, and if you don't think they didn't build those without Chinese help or Russian help, then you're just out of it. You don't understand that North Korea is getting tons of support through China and probably Russia as well, especially in building that and with their nukes. So could China use North Korea as kind of a proxy to attack the U.S. nuclear? Yes, they could. Could they have them go into South Korea and start something up to distract the U.S. further and deplete more of our resources before they go into Taiwan? Yes, that's possible. It says here that Kim Yo-jong, who's the sister of Kim Jong-un, warned Tuesday that North Korea is ready to take overwhelming action against the military activities by the United States and South Korea, as the rivals are staging joint military drills involving American strategic assets, including nuclear assets. So North Korea very upset. They said they're going to respond overwhelming. Will they do something? Who knows? But we know they have nukes and they could do it. And they're not the most stable country out there. And lastly, this is key and the last point I want to make. According to a brand new poll that was just released, 43% of the U.S. voters think that we are literally on the brink of World War III. As I mentioned in many of my videos before, we are at World War III right now. People aren't realizing it. When the history books are written, you're going to go back in time and see the steps of what's going on right now with Ukraine and China. You're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. They are in World War III. But 43% of the U.S. agrees that we're on the brink of it. Once that gets over 50%, or they get to 50% think that we are, even though we haven't shot a kinetic weapon ourselves at the United States, anybody, you're going to see the U.S. just go for it, I think. Once they got half the population thinking that mindset, might as well go ahead and just do it, since that mindset's that we're already at war. I think it ramps up from there. So that's a key indicator as well. Like I said earlier, in the comments below, write what you think about this article. Do you think that we're on the brink of war with China? When do you think it might happen? Or do you think this will all just get calmed down and blow over and China's just blustering once again and won't do anything with Taiwan or the United States? That's all I have for you. So once again, keep your ear to the ground, head on a swivel.